All right. Good morning, Dan. Gosh, sit down for another podcast. I've got a bunch of fresh information. I'm just getting back from Hawaii, so this it is like a great episode where I have all that stuff in the forefront of my mind. But I really liked the bow hunting prep for season in this episode. We talk about all the little things that's making a difference and what guys should be doing their last 2 weeks to a month leading up to the bow hunting season.
Yeah, there's just so many little things that can go wrong, right, on a bow hunt. And to do your homework, and we talked about taking notes, literally, but it's so important for all these little things for them to come together to make your hunt successful ultimately. And we've all been there. We've all failed because of little things. But yeah, if you're proactive, you can go into season feeling confident, prepared, and unstoppable ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Undeniable. Uh yeah, it's you gave me some tips today that I'll take away that I'll put into my practice here leading into season. So I definitely picked up some tidbits, so I know other bow hunters will as well. So yeah, it's a great episode, man. So we just want to thank our sponsors for today's show, and we'll get into it. So I want to thank Cutter Stabilizers. I really like Earl Stroll, small business owner. He's really put a bunch of R&D into these stabilizers. They're low profile for shooting in the wind, which we talk about today, about shooting in the wind, that is. And then you can add or subtract weights on your front bar, side bar, all different lengths. Just a great product.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you can't complain about that. Universal, I love that. I love being able to add weight to the front and length. I don't usually hunt with a sidebar, but I know you do a lot. Very important, especially for that, you know, longer range shooting. It's stability is huge. It's ultimately the deal breaker. So for a stabilizer that's universal and really you can integrate it into your system or into however you like it to feel, you can do it. So that's ultimately the power of the cutter stabilizers for sure.
Yeah, just helps with the hold, the reaction of the bow, and then having the different sizes. Like the longer your stabilizer, the less weight you have to add, so you can have a lighter setup with the same hold. So there's a bunch of different options there, but producing great products. And I really like his connection points. Like these things are built really hardy to take the abuse that us bow hunters put on them in the mountains. So yeah, Earl's doing a great job with them. Thanks to Cutter, and thanks to Team Lodge. Dan, you have some experience with Team Lodge and using these base camps.
Yeah, the base camps or what they are is they're trailers and they set down on the ground. They're kind of based off of the ice fishing style trailers that you wheel out onto the ice and you set them down onto the ice. And so they've modularized those into hunting, and ultimately they're customizable to however you want them built. I mean, you can have them build a custom trailer, or there's like five or six different sizes that you can choose from. But they're just such a stable platform, soundproof platform. You set these things down on the ground and there's no rocking in the wind, and that they stay warmer. You can't hear a thing. Like I've said this before, there could be a grizzly bear dancing on the top of a Team Lodge and you wouldn't know it. I mean, that's how rock solid these things are. But they're designed for practical use for the hunter. I mean, they're toy haulers, they're car hauler, or not car haulers, but they're toy haulers. They have that, big door in the back. You can wheel your side by side in, four wheeler, dirt bikes. We've done it all. And then the bunk beds that fold down up front. You can get them with sinks. You can get them with bathrooms. You don't have to have the bathrooms, but not only is it a great product, but they're great guys. They're hunters just like you and me. That they started this business, and so yeah, just great guys. Michael over there, his brother Eric, they're Tanner, a bunch of great guys at the company. Once again, small company. We just connect on so many different levels because of that too, and they're great hunters too. By the way, I've hunted with them for whitetails over there in South Dakota. So great hunters, great all around company. So it's fun and it's special when you have guys that we can work with, but we would use their product anyway. We would recommend it anyway. So that makes the sponsorship even better.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Yeah, great products, and they did commit to buying a rifle or bow if you buy a Team Lodge and mention you heard it on the podcast. I don't know that it's official, but like you say, stand up guys, and they mentioned it once to Dan, so we repeat it here on the podcast. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just a great base camp and so comfortable, not much setup or cleanup or anything like that, which definitely allows you to hunt more and recover better, sleep on a real bed. So yeah, those guys are producing great products. Thanks to Team Lodge for their support of the podcast. And yeah, over at Eastman's, I saw a new Beyond the Grid season has started, right? And so there's an elk hunt. Is it one of your buddies, Dan, or what's the first episode on there? I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, so we decided to release a combo episode first because my Wyoming elk episode is going to release at the Casper event that we have going on August 8th. I know this is, by the time you guys are listening to this, it's probably past August 8th, but August 10th, that episode will release. We released an episode on the 27th of July, and that was with a couple of buddies of mine, Ian and Doug. I hunted with Doug all over the West, Canada for birds, and Maui. He's one of my Maui guys that I hunted axis deer with for several years over there. And then Ian, he finally drew Wyoming. I grew up hunting elk with him. And so it was kind of fun to bring it all to full circle and hunt with him as well last year, bow hunting elk, what we did when we were teenagers in down here in Wyoming. And so just really a special episode in that way. We comboed their hunt because we did hunt together. And then a bull, the giant 7x7 that Doug harvested with a rifle, we actually found that bull opening day at archery with my buddy Ian, and he almost got an arrow into that bull. So it's just crazy. You can't predict how hunting is going to go down. And it's so fun when you walk away from a hunt and you're just like, wow, like what are the odds of that happening? That was amazing. So that's the type of hunt that was. And I think we portrayed that in the episode too. The feedback's been great. So we sure appreciate everybody watching.
Yeah, good stuff, Dan. Yeah, I got to check out that episode. And then, yeah, by the time this releases, your elk episode, which is one of the my favorite bow hunting episodes of any show that I've ever watched. Like, man, that thing is just awesome. So guys have to go check that out as well. A bunch of new ones coming out this season. We also have the other podcasts, the magazines, Eastman's TagHub for research. And of course, we have the Deer Collective and the Elk Collective. So if you want to get a tune-up right before season, you're sure to cut your learning curve by years. So check those out as well. Am I missing anything, Dan?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, the Elk Collective, Deer Collective. Use code GAS1, GAS numerical 1, and you'll get $30 off. You're going to get a knife now, and your name gets in the hat to win a gas card. Ultimately, $100 gas card. So that's kind of the promo that we have going on now for the Deer Collective and the Elk Collective. Huge savings, free knife, and the potential winning of a gas card, $100 card. So that's pretty awesome too. I'm working on new content. I'm going to release another batch here, probably the end of this week or the beginning of next week, specifically on the Elk Collective. We got some Deer Collective stuff coming up too, but I just been super busy on content for that. And Beyond the Grid editing. We have new episodes coming up in August and into September. Guy Eastman shot a Boone and Crockett moose. That's the one I'm working on right now, that episode. I took my brother elk hunting as well. You won't believe this footage, Brian, when you see my brother shoot his bull. Long story short, he's kind of down below me. It's really thick in there. I call this bull in right across from him. He shoots the bull. It runs up to me, pumping blood out both sides. To 3 yards.
Wow.
And so it's just a different angle that you don't really get to see when it comes to bow hunting because of how we are positioned. And it's not for the faint of heart. You know, it's bow hunting. It was a perfect shot, you know, with the blood and stuff, but it is reality. And it was a little bit jaw dropping, I will say. But that episode will be coming up too at the end of August and the 1st of September. It's a 2-part episode. So yeah, very exciting stuff coming.
Man, that's wild. Yeah, good work. I can't wait to see the footage. So yeah, So solid, Dan. So proud of that. Deer Collective, Elk Collective, all the content you've been producing. So definitely check that out and put in that promo code and maybe get yourself a gas card and a free knife and save a little money on that deal. So sounds good, man. Let's get into this episode.
Okay, let's do it.
But yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Looking at that weather, yeah, I definitely have to be cognizant of it. It's like the smoke and things. I don't like hunting in it, but I can't let it stop my hunts as well. I gotta just adapt and have to glass closer country or whatever it is. But yeah, it's good that we're preparing. I hope we get these August rains or early September where it kind of knocks that smoke down and then also knocks the temp down.
Yeah, that's the tricky part is usually we get something the end of August somewhere in the West, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, there'll be some storms that roll through and really it changes the game and then other places get missed. But yeah, I mean, the smoke, it's like, man, if you're a hunter out West, especially bow hunting in September, it's almost like that we hunt in the smoke more than we hunt out of the smoke.
It's so true.
Last year we were spoiled. The year before it was pretty bad, but yeah, with the dry weather and smoke, it just kind of is what it is. But hopefully we get some rain. And it's amazing how much it really impacts, the elk movement based on the condition of the range and how much grazing is out there with cows and whatnot. But I've had years where it's been really green and wet. And these elks like stay up on private. This is a totally different area. They stay over on private because the range is good. And then years where the range is so dry and the graze and whatnot, they hit these alfalfa fields. But to get to these alfalfa fields, they have to go across this massive portion of public land. And so the hunting's just unbelievable. But you don't get the same conditions every year. And so some years there's zero elk on public and they don't come on public. And other years it's phenomenal. And you go out there and you could kill a bull or a cow. It's a cow area, cow elk area, limited entry area, but you kill a cow on, one morning from the truck, but it's not always like that.
Yeah, it differs from year to year. I've seen it in horn growth, like that spot I'm hunting, a high country spot. And I've been there in a green year where I show up and it looks like a golf course up there. Like it's still all green in September. And that year that I hunted it, when it was like that, I can look back at old photos and it looks like almost a different range from a dry year, so green. I think they got summer rains and it's hard to say what the weather is like, 16 hours away from me. But that year, like half of the bucks had extra kickers and inlines and like extra trash on them. So it really made a difference in the horn growth. And then I can hunt the same area on a dry year and hardly find any non-typicals or extra points. They're all typicals. So I think it makes a huge difference in the antler growth as well.
100%. And how much, these bulls get broken up too, like from fighting. If you have like a rifle tag after the rut on a dry year, I mean, I was taking a buddy hunting in 2020. It was super dry. We couldn't find an intact bull. Everything was busted. There's this giant, like probably easily a 350 frame bull, 6x6, or I think he was a 6x7. But I think like 10 of his 12 points were broken. It was insane. Some were broken more than others. Some were just chipped, but he was like broken off his whole back end. It was just a beam. And we'll see that here too. You can tell by the growth here in some of these arid units, these arid elk habitats on dry years, the horn, the antlers is very porous and lightweight. And then you get to some of these high mountain units where precipitation is high, or maybe these bulls, they've just found out that they hang out by these snow drifts all summer and they're eating the high octane green of the green, very densely saturated with moisture. And that directly reflects into their antler growth too. And you held Tyler Johnerson's bull, how heavy that thing was, but it's the same thing. You can kill a 350-inch bull in some of these mountain units and then kill a 350 bull in a desert unit. And the weight of just the antler is so drastically different.
Yeah, that's wild. I hadn't thought about that, Dan. That you bring up a good point. There's nothing that hurts my feelings worse than a busted up bull or buck, man. I just I can't. I usually don't want to shoot a bull like that, and he'll get a pass from me if he's got a busted tine. And it is a big, mature animal, and it's just such a shame when they have a busted off fore or a busted off main beam like that. It just kills me. And I've shot a couple bulls with some busted tines, but usually I don't notice, or you see him and you don't notice he's got a busted two or something like that. But yeah, nothing worse than a busted up big old bull like that. Like, I guess if you're challenging yourself to kill the older age class, you could probably go after them, but it's just such a shame that they don't reach their full potential, and you kill a giant bull, and he doesn't quite have the look or the feel of like having all his antler.
Yeah, I mean, it's what do you do? I mean, with these bulls, we passed them. It's just, I don't mind, and it's number one, these hunts that we went on, this one in 2020 where all these bulls were broken. It wasn't my hunt. It was my friend, and ultimately it comes down to, what are you going to be happy with? What look do you like? And we ended up killing a 350-inch bull, but his royal was broken, and that was the only tine on him that was broken. And so you're like, okay, we can match up the other side and get it repaired. And ultimately that's what he had done, was they just fix it, right? I mean, to match the other side. And I think for the conditions in the situation, I mean, we came out as good as we could have, but there's something about it too. Like, it just bugs me. Like, I don't like looking at it like a busted up rack, and I don't like broken tines really. And so I would pass as well. And not that I would go home empty over it, but I would definitely find the least broken up bull that I possibly could before I'll shoot a busted one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it is, the nature of the beast. Like, hunting out west is just like every year's different, which makes it a different puzzle to solve, which is a good thing. But it is tough to reproduce or replicate. You kind of see some trends in these areas and things, and you kind of hope for the best, and then you deal with whatever conditions you got. But it should be fun, man. I'm really looking forward to fall. It's coming quick. Like, after the 4th, it just starts cruising by. So yeah, really trying to make sure that I'm well prepared, and like you say, it's a lot of responsibility this time of year. It's just like making sure things are taken care of and that you have your days lined up. And we're leaving on a little family trip here for a few days and go hang out with the family. I get both my girls on a little vacation, which will be fun. But really just trying to take care of all that stuff and prepare everybody for being gone, and the wildness that is the fall hunting season, or the chaos. And got a taste of it just getting back from Hawaii, which was a great trip. And man, it was so fun. It was like all my heat training came into play there. It's like always really hot, but running in the heat of the day, all the sauna work, like it really paid off out there. And I was able to do, I averaged about 12 miles a day hunting out there, and it was 4 a.m. every morning. So got to feel a little bit of that sleep deprived, and then got to really put like a wear and tear on my body that day after day, a big miles, big elevation. And walking around in that lava rock takes way more effort than, this country here in the West or in Montana, where you can just walk, and so 12, 13 miles out there a day puts a wear and tear on the body, and especially with the heat. But man, just had so much fun out there. And it was kind of, I had bear season, but the real kickoff to my fall season was out there. It just had an absolute riot.
It's, hunts like that, I love those type of hunts that, you're uncomfortable, right? And you're out of maybe your element a little bit. And I laugh, these guys I work with around the office, it's 90 degrees, and they're like, oh, I wish it was winter. It's so hot out. And I laugh, because like, I'm just like, bring it on. And I like the heat, because there's 9 months of cold. There's 2 months of heat. Embrace the heat. And because it's gone before you know it. And for me, it's easier to get cool than it is to get warmed up, in the grand scheme of things. It's not like we're out there hunting every day in, the heat or anything. But, if it feels hot to me, and, we're 98 degrees the other day, 100 degrees, I went out and, took my shirt off, and I sat in the sun for 30 minutes, in 99-degree temps, and you're just sweating your butt off, and you're drinking water or whatever, and you're just freaking embracing it, like you're saying, and before you know it, it's nothing. It doesn't even, like, the heat's nothing. Once you just, like, whether you sauna or you sit there and endure it for a minute. I hate sitting inside in AC all day and then going out there. Of course, I just sit in it and embrace it and soak it in, and then all of a sudden running and gunning in 90 degrees is nothing.
Yeah, same. I keep telling my wife it's not hot enough. It's like above 90 degrees. And I'm like, yeah, but I get up in this high elevation in the mountains and it cools down up there. It was only low 90s, high 80s today. It just wasn't hot enough. So yeah, it's like a mindset or embracing it. And then I'll talk to my dad and he's like, yeah, you really got to be active or get stuff done in the morning because there's not much you can do middle of the day. And it's like, well, no, the heat just doesn't bother me. Like I've become like heat adaptive or heat acclimated where, yeah, it's just, it's nothing. And I embrace it and almost enjoy the heat at this point. Like I spending time in the hottest part of the day, whether that's running or whether that's construction. And yeah, I hear guys complain or they hate the heat. And yeah, I don't know. I think the more you put yourself in that element or embrace it, like it can't get hot enough for me right now. It's like this is nothing. And hunting in that Hawaii, all that heat training like really came into play where it just didn't bother me at all. Like you just hunt, like it gets warm in the middle of the day or in the sunshine. But yeah, you just find a little shade and you got those trade winds out there that cool you down. It just wasn't that bad. So yeah, I'm the same, Dan. I have embraced it now where I hear guys complain and I hear guys that hate the heat, and it's just like, man, I love it. It couldn't be hotter. It could be hotter for me. Like I enjoy it, and we only get a couple months of it, and then it'll be winter. And I think it's the same thing with the cold too, is being able to embrace that and withstand it and not get psyched out when it gets below zero or the wind's blowing sideways. It's just like I'm hunting no matter what. But yeah, I think you got to embrace the extremes.
Yeah, and Hawaii, that's as brutal as it gets. I still tell guys, buddies are, talking about hunting in the heat or whatever. But one year I was in Maui and it was the end of June and it was 89 degrees, which doesn't sound that hot. I mean, but for the tropics, 89 degrees, no wind, 96% humidity or whatever. And you're in the sun. The sun, like, as you know, when you're near the equator, the sun is way more intense than the sun at 90 degrees when you're in, at home, in Montana or Wyoming. So you're laying there in those temps in the direct sunlight with like a lightweight hoodie and your hood on because you don't want to get completely crispified. So you have your hood on and you're laying there like waiting for an axis buck to stand up. Like, I swear, like all I'd have to do is look at a match and I would catch fire. Like that's how hot I felt. And that's easily the hottest I've ever been. But it once you get sweating and you get like that, moisture on your layer, your core layer, like it's really not that bad. Yeah. And then usually you got trade winds or something that help a ton. But golly, that summertime sun at the equator, I bet that felt a little hot, huh?
It's so intense. Yeah. In that middle of the day, we kind of had a good game plan where, you can hunt the middles of the days, but really we focused our energy morning and night, and we'd take it into late morning. We'd start early in the afternoon, but it was a really good strategy where I wasn't zonked in the afternoon evening hunt and really could put on really good miles and full effort out there for those mornings and nights. And there would only be like a couple hour break in the middle of the day, but that seemed to serve me pretty well out there. But yeah, it was pretty intense there at different times, but it prepares us for this early antelope, the early season mule deer, and even some of the early elk hunts where it can be really hot. And when your body's heat adaptive, you like do good in hot weather and also exerting yourself in that hot weather, and your body's good at cooling yourself, and you're just able to keep like a good body temperature and able to still push and hunt hard where you just don't get worn down by the heat. And so yeah, I think it really benefits me. I know it benefits you as well. I think it's a game changer, especially as a lot of our bow seasons take place in early hot weather.
Yeah, it really is. And everything's prep, right? Everything that we do before season is prep for season. And whether you're hunting those frigid temps, in the middle of winter, there's late season hunts to do, spring hunts, whether you're dealing with rain or late snow, bad temps, and then summer heat. I mean, ultimately it's just prep for fall. I mean, that's why we do it, right? And that's why you're in Hawaii in the heat. You're prepping for fall, making sure the bow's good, you're building a little confidence. It's just what a guy needs going into fall, with just a little bit of confidence and something in a recent time frame, not 9 months ago time frame, but like 2 or 3 1 month time frame before. It makes all the difference in the world.
100%. Well, and just getting in sync with bow hunting again, like, man, it is so difficult, and, out there making moves on things. And I know we talked about this in the spring and making plays. It was when you were fresh off your axis hunt. I was bear hunting. Those mouflon sheep are so switched on, and I played things really well. I made good moves, good plays. Of course, the bow hunting instincts take over, but I had one where I really messed up, where I was on a couple good rams and I was like 100 yards away, had a perfect approach where I could come up and come over the ledge and then shoot one of those really nice rams. And I started coming up and over and around them, and I ran into a couple ewes. And they kind of saw me when I saw them, and I froze, and we sat there and stared at each other for 5 minutes. 10 minutes went by. And then pretty soon I just had this thought, like, okay, the rams are going to move off. Like, I got to just spook these ewes, hope they go in a different direction, and try to get a shot at this ram. And so I ended up making my move, spooking the ewes that spooked into the rams that blew the whole mountain up. And then they went, and I never got a chance. And man, I was like, had a long hike out that day. I'm like, gosh, I know better. I got to be more patient. I can't be blowing up the mountain or blow up these ewes and just hope for the best. Like, I would have been better off to stay there and been patient, even if it would have taken 30 minutes, let those ewes feed off, and then go chase those rams or go find where they bed, and not just spook them out of the countryside. And so, I learned that lesson, and then I was able to apply it. Luckily, I was able to earn another opportunity. I found those same 2 rams the next morning and started working around on them. Well, actually, I'd found 2 nice rams, and then the 2 big rams were down below them. So as I'm working around the 2 rams, it's wide open country. I got stuck in the open. And so I had to just wait and let all those rams feed off. And it was like I let all that morning hour of movement and let them just feed away from me. And then I made my play. And, I couldn't find those rams. It didn't work out perfectly for me because I couldn't find them, look for them for 2 hours, couldn't figure out where they had bedded. And it was like, well, at least I played it patient. And then I was hiking out. I mean, we're talking the last hour on the last day, and I catch a nice ram and a group of rams. And same thing there, as I made my play down, I was kind of exposed. And so I just held up and I just waited. I know it's late morning. I know this is my last chance, but I just can't risk it and blow them up off the mountain. And finally they fed over some rises or over some things. I made my move, and then just able to make a perfect play on them, pop up, get a great broadside shot, put the arrow in the 12 ring on that ram. And the last hour of the last day killed a ram, which was a really difficult hunt after like 5 days of hunting them. But just learning these little lessons, and then the shooting and the trade winds out there are really tough to shoot. And I shot really well on axis and then on that ram, but I did have a couple misses as well. And I had a couple misses with this gnarly crosswind, and they were at like 40 yards, and then they were just walking away from me, and I got a shot at 60, which I can make. But in that winds of trying to and once you draw back, you're pretty well committed, because now you've made this movement to get drawn, the gig is up. And man, I had a tough time settling my pin, and I settled my pin and gave it some room for air for wind drift, and it blew twice as far as I thought it should, and blew by the front of him. And then I missed him again at 72, which was a long shot. He stopped again broadside. I should have known at that point, and I kind of let I did pass after that shot. He gave me another one at 72. And I'm like, I can't make that in the wind right now. It's just not going to happen. And so shooting in those winds or those real life scenarios, I'm able to learn some good lessons. But man, did it get me tuned up for fall. Shot really well, made good plays, made some mistakes, or just some places where I could improve, which I think now I've already got those behind me coming into fall. So it's just so good for the bow hunting skill set, man.
And like what you're talking, you're reflecting on that, and you've made your notes, right? You made your mental notes on, man, I should have done this, right? If I was a little more patient. and you're carrying into fall with that fresh in your mind. And not everybody's going to get to go bow hunt in July and August and get tuned up for falls. But what you can do is whatever your last hunt was, or last several hunts, just make notes, like keep a journal. And we've talked about that in the past, of just keeping a logbook, keeping, just information on each hunt, and maybe what went right, what went wrong, and what you would have done different. And if you have stuff like that from last fall, keeping that written down and taking those notes into your next hunt, or just going over that stuff before you go into your next hunt. I think that's the difference maker when it comes to growing and becoming a better bow hunter. That's the stuff that really is going to concrete your mistakes in your mind and get better, and don't do some of these things. Don't repeat your mistakes. I think that's so important.
Dude, it's so true, man. It's so powerful. It's like you always come off season or off a hunt like hitting on all cylinders and remembering these mistakes and then overcoming them or learning from them. You're so right, Dan. It's like scratching those notes down when it's fresh in your head, or being able to relook through your notes before a hunt and just remember these lessons, right? So you don't have to learn them over and over and over again. It's like, you learn this lesson about patience and not pushing it and spooking animals. And it's like, okay, I've learned that lesson. I don't know how many times by now, but here it is. I'm learning it all over again on a sheep hunt in Hawaii, and now I'm going to carry it into fall. But you're right, like just learning for this, getting your mind right for these hunts, because really it's going to be limited opportunities this year. Whether it's elk or mule deer, you're only going to get so many. And so you have to be able to capitalize when you get these opportunities. So I played the winds right. Like I played the winds really well while I was hunting out there. Didn't hardly get winded once, other than when I was moving past sheep that I was trying to get by, and then they'd get my bad wind tunnel. And it's like, okay, that's where they wind me. But I played the winds really well. But you're right. I need to jot all these things down and not make the same mistakes come fall, because it's going to be limited opportunities, and you have to be really good at capitalizing these opportunities. And while that is shooting at animals, range finding, in close, the moves you make, it's also your approach. It's also your stock, your decision making. Like all these things are going to factor in, and it's a thin line between success and failure. And so if you can review that or get your mind right before these hunts and capitalize on these opportunities, you're just going to be way more successful.
Yeah. You're just doing your homework, taking notes, and being a good student, right? That's ultimately what it is. And that is the difference maker. I mean, if you want to become a better bow hunter, go on a lot of hunts and get some practice in, get some reps in. That's great too. But taking notes and working on your weaknesses, that's ultimately what makes the biggest difference.
Yeah.
It's funny. You're talking about wind, and it brought back a memory. My first axis deer, actually, and I was on the same island there. And it's 2012, I think. But that morning or that day, the first couple of days, the wind was like 50. I mean, you know how it can get there. It's just stupid. And it's like, okay, we're bow hunting. You're not realistically going to shoot. You can't hold your bow steady in a 50-mile-an-hour wind. But it's opening day, and there were people everywhere. And so I was down on the slopes, and I was just hoping that, hunters up on, above me on top of the mountain were going to push some deer down to me. And so I picked a ridge and I sat there, but I sat behind a really big boulder, and that boulder was my wind blocker. And so I was testing this. It was just getting light and the wind's ripping, and I draw my bow back, and I was like, heck yeah, I can hold steady. I got this giant boulder, as a wind blocker. And I was like, okay, I got some lanes here down this ridge, and like, I can see this happening. So long story short, these deer come filing down, running down, and they had to cross this little gulch, and they all came by me at 30 yards, and they were facing to my left as I'm looking at them, and the wind's ripping. And I just guessed, right? I mean, some of it's, you don't know until you shoot an arrow in that stuff. But at 30 yards, I held on that axis deer's tail, and I hit him like in the shoulder, like right behind the shoulder, because he went 50 yards and tipped over. But that much wind drift, like 3 foot of wind drift, of my arrow at 33 yards or whatever it was. But I mean, ultimately still, that's kind of a lucky shot, but it's just amazing. And that's something I probably wouldn't even try that, unless I had a perfect scenario like that where I could actually hold my bow steady. But like on an elk or a deer here at home, I probably wouldn't even try that unless everything was set up so perfectly like that where I could hold my bow steady. But stuff like that and shooting in the wind, it's ultimately it's great practice. It's great experience. And look at that. I can reflect back on that and put myself back in that same spot and, laugh about it ultimately because it was a lucky shot. But that's where notes come into play again on what you can and can't do in the wind and practicing in the wind. But yeah, it was not a big buck, but I'll remember that shot and that hunt for a long time because it was just so silly with how crazy the wind was.
Well, and you got a little bit of room for error, but yeah, just knowing what your wind drift was like at 30, that's crazy to have that kind of wind drift. But yeah, I noticed shooting in that wind, just like you did with the boulder. I shot a ram last year and I had good winds or strong winds, and I was able to get behind a bush. And I actually drew a couple times before I was steady, released an arrow, and killed that ram. And that was the difference between success and failure, was like using that bush or the rock like you used to block the wind to get a good hold. And I also noticed that a direct crosswind is really tough to shoot in. And that was my experience shooting on these rams this year where I missed the 2 shots. But I know if I can shoot dead into the wind or even a quartering, then it's not going to drift as far, or I have a better hold. I also took my quiver off. That seemed to help with my hold. And so, I just learn a lot about it because there are winds out west, and it can make for difficult shots and a high degree of difficulty. But yeah, learning that stuff about the bow. And then the preparation is huge. And so Bo is absolutely dialed, shooting really good. I got all the trust and faith in it in the world. But yeah, went and shot angles the other day. And, I'd set up my third axis on that sight jig, but I had to redo that black gold sight. I had to put new gears in it. It's an old one I've been using for 10 years or whatever. They redid it for me. And so I had to reset up my third axis. And so I hadn't shot it. So I'd set it up on a sight jig. And then so I went out and shot steep angles, getting ready for this high country mule deer hunt. And things were really good on the third axis, left to right. It shot really good. But just learning your bow, it's so tough to shoot off those angles. And then, just like knowing your rangefinder and your cuts as well. It seems like if I'm shooting at a 50-degree plus slope, I can put the speed of my bow into my rangefinder. It still seems to hit just a touch high where I need to take about a yard off it. And who knows if that's the way my broadhead's planing? Who knows if that's the rangefinder in their cut. These rangefinders are pretty good nowadays, and so you can really trust them, but you need to proof them. You need to know all this stuff. I can imagine a shot that I'd get in Colorado off a 200-inch deer that's off a cliff, and not knowing that, I may hit them high if I didn't know my rangefinder and know exactly where things are hitting, or I might hit them a little bit left. So, right now, we are in crunch time for season to come in and be at our very best. So make sure that you're shooting from your knees. Make sure your bow is dialed. Make sure you're shooting angles. Make sure you're shooting your broadheads. I know that at 80 yards, my broadheads start to hit about 3-4 inches low at my field points. Do I plan on taking a shot like that? No. But, you never know when you need a follow-up shot. You never know when you need a shot on an antelope. So my sight tape is set up exactly perfect for my broadheads at all my extended ranges, just because I want to have that confidence. And yeah, I may have to dial up an extra yard for my field points if I'm practicing extreme distances, but just knowing that it is spot on my broadheads, and when I hold my pin in the middle, my arrow is going to hit in the middle, it gives me confidence being in the mountains, man. And so like making sure you're doing all those little things to make sure you're prepared, because once season gets here, you have the skill set you have, and you have the bow that you have, and you just want to make sure that everything is dialed in.
Yeah, you don't want to risk your one opportunity on a dumb error. And we've all done it, and we've all, missed shots. And one I can think of as we're talking about rangefinders, some of these new rangefinders, they're a multi-use tool for rifle hunting, long range stuff or whatever, but you got to put them in the angle compensation mode. And I made that mistake on a brand new rangefinder, and I wasn't even paying attention, but like these SIGs, the AMR, it was not in the angled measuring mode, or whatever that acronym stands for, the AMR. And yeah, I missed high. So when you're shooting angles, that's so important. You have to be in the angle compensation mode. Obviously, it comes into play with rifle hunting too at longer ranges, but archery, it's even more drastically makes a difference. So that's why, like you're saying, it's so good to get out there and shoot in your hunting equipment. Use everything that you're going to use when you're hunting, because you don't want a little dumb mistake like that you could have prevented to make or break your hunt. And that's ultimately what happened when I missed that buck. I shot over him, and that was my one chance, because it was the first hunt of the season, and it was a brand new rangefinder, and the hustle and the gear shuffle before season, and that was the downfall. So get your equipment that you're going to use it, practice with it, and then don't change once you go in to bow season.
Oh, dude, you're so right. Yeah, angled modified range, I think, is what that stands for. But yeah, that, and then change out your batteries as well.
Yeah.
I can remember range finding a giant buck that walked out and my battery had died on my rangefinder. I carry one in my bino harness, but that is not the time to be changing out your battery on your rangefinder. Is like trying to shoot a big old buck. So yeah, like change out the batteries. Also, like what I noticed too is I get in the late season and my arrow string will hit my sleeve and of a jacket or whatever, and my shot will go low. And so I've missed, some great late season bucks by just having extra layers on and then hitting my sleeve with my bowstring. So I carry like a sleeve compression in my bag, in my truck. I bought like a 5-pack of them. I just have them everywhere. So if I'm wearing jackets or I'm wearing sleeves, I compress that sleeve down because I know my shot will go low. Not to mention shooting with your pack, shooting with your bino harness, like all those little things that can make a silly, stupid mistake can be the difference between killing a giant bull and having a unnotched tag.
Absolutely. We've all been there multiple times over our careers with little silly things like that. And yeah, that's ultimately why, we hunt off season, we hunt spring, we hunt summer, is because that's just another good excuse to test gear and to test your setup and know what's working, especially when you're getting new gear. And the sleeve thing, like you said, like I'm very conscious of that and what layers I bring with me. And like I love a puffy jacket, but it can't be too puffy, otherwise it's not gonna work for me. And so that's kind of why I've gravitated more towards like a heavier hoodie and then a puffy vest, is because of the whole arm thing with bow hunting. And so figuring out what works for you is also very important.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be at the range too. I mean, yeah, do it at the range and figure out what works best for you. But yeah, it's just amazing, the little things that make all the difference.
Devil's in the details, man. And getting out of your comfort level, out from your yard, out on these 3D shoots, knowing your arc of your arrow to get over hills, to get over grass, to get over branches, clearance, things of that nature. And I always I've got a multi-pin, and one of the advantages of it is like, when I dial for a shot or say I'm taking a shot, I can look at my 20-yard pin and look at that branch at 20 yards and kind of see the arc of my arrow. Or make sure that you've got clearance off your bottom cam when you're shooting close to the ground off rocks, or close to rocks. Because boy, you hit your bottom cam or your top cam on a branch or whatever, that shot's not going to be anywhere close. So the devil's in the details, and that stuff can really make or break a hunt. And so as we're a month away from season, 2 weeks away from antelope season, it's like doing all these little things on a free weekend day or a free evening and getting to the mountain, shooting angles, just making sure everything is absolutely dialed in, because it'll definitely make or break a hunt at some point this season for all of us.
Yeah, the body position. And I don't do this enough sometimes too at the range practicing, but whether I'm practicing on my knees or with like you're saying, with the limbs and making sure your trajectory's cleared. Like that's all very important stuff. And that's why 3D ranges are so handy too, is getting some practice in not shooting at a bullseye, not shooting at a dot, but like a 3D animal, and then picking a spot and then shooting. That's just a little bit different than shooting a target with a bullseye on it. And so that's super important too. But I don't shoot off my knees too much, but I do like to practice that quite a bit at the range on my knees, and just making sure that, ground clearance, like you're saying, just making sure everything goes smoothly and my gear's clearing, and I'm keeping my form, because you want to see what you tend to do. Like, does your impact tend to change when you're on your knees? And if so, what can I do to correct this? And that's super important. And when you're outside of that, very controlled environment at the range, your form can break down, your body position breaks down. So like, body positioning is so important. And that goes for rifle hunting, shotgunning, whatever. It's all about your body positioning. You have to set up your body for where you're going to shoot. You don't want to set up your body for where that elk or where that duck is coming in from. You want to set up your body positioning for where your shooting lane is. And that can be, tough to learn too. And sometimes, it takes some failures to really get that to sink in. But body positioning and practice is at the top of my list.
Yeah. You make a really good point, Dan. The body positioning, you never shoot a shot twisted up when you're at the range or you're in the backyard. But when you're hunting, sometimes you get stuck with your feet in the wrong position. And you make a good point of making sure you're setting yourself up for your shot to where, your legs are positioned right, you're turned in the right direction. But, it may be a hunting scenario where you have to be a little twisted to the left or right. So knowing that you can shoot a little twisted because you practiced it is huge. And it's like, I love shooting from my feet, but half or more of my shots come from my knees. I don't know if it's just the way I end up. And I know, like, I must have a short torso. I cannot shoot from a sitting position. So I know that's out from me. But for my knees, I also, like, there's ways I shoot better from my knees and worse. So if I sit on my feet and I'm on my knees, I seem to be more stable than if I rise up just off my knees. Now, you would think rising up off my knees, I'd have a better base, but it seems like I'm more stable sitting on my feet. But I know my effective range goes down by all of 10 to 15 yards shooting from my knees. I am not as stable. My hold isn't as good. And so, like yesterday I was doing a CrossFit workout, and then like a CrossFit style workout, and my arms, my back, everything was dead at the end of the workout. And I went and shot my bow after that just to feel that hold. And then shooting from my knees was a real challenge, And so I'm just preparing myself for that, because I know those adrenaline filled moments, that pin isn't going to be totally rock steady. And I need to continue to pull on my shot or know my shot process to be able to execute a good one. So yeah, there's just all these little things that are going to come into play during season. But if you spend the month right now or the next couple weeks, like, really preparing for this, you just, it will make a difference come season.
Yeah. And now's the time. Now's the time to do something every day. Not that you have to shoot 25 arrows every day, but do something in that form of training. And I like the jogging and then coming back and just shooting with a high heart rate, whatever you have to do to get a high heart rate. And then, shooting a 3D target. That's huge. That's huge. Hunting is not like shooting at the range at all.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to your adrenaline and to, having to shoot under pressure, timing, it's just something that you can't replicate unless you're doing and you're thinking things like this outside the box. And that's ultimately what makes the difference.
Yeah, one arrow groups too this time of year. It's like
Yes.
really putting emphasis on that first shot, having a broadhead on the arrow, and then like walking out and going, okay, this is it. This is my one shot, and I'm gonna shoot. And I'll put emphasis on that first arrow, or make it or just decide that I'm only going to shoot one arrow, and then I'll go to work and I'll come home and I may shoot another one arrow group, but it's going to be that first arrow that really counts. And so it doesn't matter what type of groups you're shooting this time of year, it's that one arrow that's going to matter. So a broadhead tipped arrow, being able to read the wind, read your hold, execute one shot cold, and then, like putting a bunch of emphasis on that every day for 2 weeks leading up to the hunt, you're going to be really good come that one arrow when that bull steps out or that buck steps out.
Absolutely. And another exercise that I like too is the holds, the long holds. So you'll start off with 30 seconds hold and then shoot a good arrow, 45 seconds, and working your way up. And like a minute and a half, it doesn't sound like a long time, but that's a long time, like to hold your bow for a minute and a half and then like shoot a good arrow. And it's weird how, you go to the range or you draw your bow back for the first time that day, and you feel so strong, and it feels like extension. Thank you. An extension of your arm, and it's like nothing. It's second nature. But then once you start holding for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, like your body starts feeling clunky, and you can feel like your arms and your back and like everything breaking down. And you're like, okay, like this is not feeling natural now. And it's so easy for your form to break down in those moments. And so knowing what that feels like is so important, because if you can still know it's coming and know how you feel and know how your muscles are feeling after a minute of drawing, and if you can still, make a good shot and place a good arrow, that's huge. And that's great training, and that's a great exercise. And so I will do that too quite a bit. Whether maybe not every day, but every other day, long holds, repetition with that, and work your way up. It's not an easy thing. It's not something that you're going to be able to do just on your first try to hold for 2 minutes and be able to shoot a good arrow. That's probably not reality, but work your way up to it, because that's gotten me in the past too, where I've been in a scenario where this bull's coming up and you think he's coming up, but he hangs up and he stops for whatever reason. They're unpredictable animals. For whatever reason, stops, and you do not have a clear shooting lane. That happened to me in Colorado one year, and I think we went and wound the footage, and it was like a minute 24 that I held, but I had my backpack on and my form was breaking down. I had my backpack, but I think what ultimately happened, because I was starting to get dizzy and lightheaded, but that backpack strap ultimately like cutting off my jugular, like my to like my head. And like, so I started getting tingly, and that was it. Like I had to let down and I blew him out. But it's good practice.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Yeah. I know Lampers at that summit, he had a 1 minute hold on a long target at the very end. You had to hold for a minute before you can shoot. And a minute is a long time, man. It's like, it's forever. And you're right. And your form starts to break down. My arm would even get numb, and you start to, like, your grip starts to twist a little bit. But a lot of times, like on bull elk, if you can hold, like a lot of times you draw and he steps behind a tree and freezes. And if you can hold your draw, he might come out and you might shoot that bull. If you have to let down your draw, you blow up everything. Like you have one chance. And if you can do those long holds, if you practiced it, you can count on your shooting. It might just be the difference of killing that bull and not killing that bull. So especially when you draw back, like that stuff happens. You think he's going to walk out and stops, and you don't have a window, and you're forced to either hold your draw, or when you let down, you're going to blow up everything. And so being able to do those long draw holds and then execute a good shot is key. I need to do more of that in my practice, especially leading up to season. But yeah, man, it's all those little things. It's going to come into play come hunting season.
It is. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Practice those little things, and it's the best thing you can do coming into season for sure.
100%. Well, thanks a bunch, Dan, for joining me this morning. Let's wrap this up, and we'll release this to the guys before hunting season. This will be a good one, and I know you're getting excited. We'll keep touching bases here before September, and then definitely check in throughout the season, as we'll definitely have some good insights into bow hunting as we start bow hunting a little bit more. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
Heck yeah. Likewise, man.